The American War of Independence laid the groundwork for the United States following the colony's break from British rule. This pivotal occurrence unfolded in the 1700s and left a lasting impact on global events. The signing of the Independence Declaration and the formation of a fresh nation opened doors to a transformed global structure. Numerous epic confrontations erupted throughout the land amid the conflict. Let's dive into the top 6. 1. The Battle of Bunker Hill, the first major battle of the Revolutionary War. On June 17, 1775, the initial major showdown of the Independence War erupted, the Battle of Bunker Hill. British leader Thomas Gage aimed to seize Dorchester Heights to bolster his position. The Patriots learned of this scheme, and roughly 1,600 fighters, guided by Colonel Israel Putnam, John Stark, and William Prescott, formed into various groups. Their mission was to secure Bunker Hill, the peak of Dorchester Heights. Patriot soldiers constructed protective barriers through the night, designed to shield them from artillery fire. The British were stunned on June 17th by what the Patriots had erected in mere hours. Their bombardment turned out to be largely ineffective, claiming just one Patriot life. As Gage commanded British forces under William Howe to land on the Boston Peninsula, a fierce and deadly fight ensued. The British ultimately forced the Patriot troops to retreat, yet they paid dearly for it. Reports suggest around 140 Patriots died in the fray, with 271 injured and 30 taken prisoner. The British suffered 226 fatalities and 828 sustained wounds. Thus, the Battle of Bunker Hill stands out as one of the most brutal engagements in the whole American War of Independence. 2. Battle of Trenton. Even though the Declaration of Independence was announced on July 4, 1776, following multiple setbacks in the War for Independence, George Washington gathered a strategy session at Lord Stirling's base on December the 22nd, 1776. He weighed options for striking at Trenton. Washington's scouts snagged a message revealing that the British planned to hold off until the Delaware iced over, then pushed toward Philadelphia. As a result, Washington and his top commanders crafted a scheme to hit Trenton on December 26th. Their strategy involved assaulting the German mercenaries employed by the British, known as Hessians, across the Delaware at 3 key spots. Roughly 1,000 militiamen from Pennsylvania, plus around 500 seasoned fighters from Rhode Island, commanded by Generals John Cadwalader and Joseph Reed, were set to ford the river and march on Trenton. Another compact unit of 700 troops under General James Ewing aimed to strike Trenton head-on, while the biggest contingent of about 2,400 soldiers, headed by Washington, Greene, Sullivan, and Stirling, planned to traverse the Delaware 9 miles north of Trenton. Intelligence from spies indicated the opposing troops in Trenton totaled somewhere from 2,000 to 3,000 fighters. Although they aimed to strike under cover of darkness, Washington's offensive ended up launching in full daylight. The assault kicked off at about 8 a.m. The entire skirmish wrapped up in just around 45 minutes. Among the Hessians, 22 fell in battle, 83 suffered injuries, and 918 officers and troops were taken prisoner, whereas the Americans endured light casualties, merely 5 injured fighters, plus 2 who succumbed to freezing conditions during the river crossing. This stood as the most brilliant operation by Washington's forces throughout the entire War for Independence. 3. The Battle of Princeton, beating back the British. Washington wasn't content with his triumph, prompting him to embark on a nocturnal trek to crush British troops stationed at Princeton. He opted to split his forces in a manner nearly mirroring his assault on Trenton. General Nathanael Greene oversaw the left wing, whereas General Sullivan handled the primary contingent of the troops. A segment of the forces, commanded by Sullivan, along with his 5,000, struck from the southern and eastern directions. Meanwhile, a pair of British units advanced down the King's Highway toward Trenton. Right after the lead unit passed over the Stony Brook Bridge, General Hugh Mercer and his squad initiated a strike. The British reformed their lines and unleashed volleys, pushing the Americans uphill using their bayonets, a tool absent from Mercer's fighters. Moreover, British artillery compelled sections of Washington's army to pull back, leading Lord Cornwallis to feel assured of victory. Yet, the tides of battle shifted dramatically. Washington's strategy prevailed, resulting in the British troops being routed and compelled to retreat to New Brunswick. In total, 28 British troops perished, with 58 sustaining injuries and 323 taken as prisoners. Conversely, 23 individuals lost their lives and 20 suffered wounds. Washington proceeded to his base in Morristown, there to devise additional strategies. The clash at Princeton served to solidify the success at Trenton, reinforcing the notion that defeating Britain in the War for Independence was indeed achievable. 4. The Battle of Germantown, a dark hour for American independence. On September 26, 1777, General Howe's forces marched into Philadelphia, the hub of the American government. Howe's takeover of Philadelphia led shortly after, in early October, to his brother Lord Howe heading off to Delaware. This split in the British ranks signaled to Washington that it was time to execute his ideas. He aimed to strike his enemies by surprise and reclaim the capital for the Patriots. So, during the night of October 3rd, he launched an assault on Howe's soldiers close to the town of Germantown. The fight kicked off as a patrol from Sullivan's group hit a British picket at Mount Airy. But the British picket fought back fiercely, warning the broader British troops. Sullivan's brigade still succeeded in driving the British picket toward Germantown. British Colonel Musgrave directed his men to barricade inside a local structure. The Patriots charged them, yet a far superior count of British fighters beat back the offensive. Washington called a strategy meeting where Henry Knox proposed wiping out Colonel Musgrave's position no matter what. Washington went along with Knox's idea. Still, the sturdy walls of the structure held up against the shelling. Patriots who breached the interior got pierced by bayonets. The toll on Washington's troops was massive. Up to 152 perished, 521 got hurt, and 438 troops ended up prisoners, whereas the British counted only 70 fatalities and 450 injured fighters. This ranked as one of the toughest setbacks for Washington's forces during the War for Independence. 5. The Battles of Saratoga, the Americans' greatest victory. It seems unlikely that anyone anticipated that merely days following the setback at Germantown, the colonists would secure the most significant triumph throughout the entire War for Independence. The Declaration of American Freedom announced in Philadelphia had never been nearer to realization. The pivotal engagement occurred on October 7th, close to the Saratoga River. General John Burgoyne, commanding a mere 1,500 troops, chose to confront the colonial forces under General Horatio Gates, which were considerably larger on this occasion. General Fraser spearheaded the assault using about 500 troops. The remainder of the unit remained in their encampment, expecting that Fraser might accomplish his plan. Nevertheless, Fraser's offensive was spotted by Daniel Morgan. Leading his 300 soldiers, he struck from the right flank, causing substantial casualties. General Gates, aware that his army greatly outnumbered the foes, commanded a retaliatory strike. The colonists repelled the adversaries, yet a critical assault ensued once Benedict Arnold arrived on the scene. Arnold ignored waiting for commands and instead launched a spontaneous charge that shattered the rival formations. In this clash, the British forces endured up to 176 fatalities, 200 injuries, and 200 prisoners taken, whereas the colonists recorded 50 fatalities and 150 injuries. Regarding Gates, this confrontation marked the peak of his martial achievements. For General Burgoyne, this undoubtedly represented the utmost embarrassment. 6. The Battle of Yorktown, the last major battle of the American Revolutionary War. Hostilities recommenced in May 1780. A British force led by Cornwallis advanced southward from New York and seized dominance over the entirety of South Carolina. Fierce partisan warfare erupted in the region, which by year's close had confined the English to just 2 urban centers, Charleston and Savannah. Meanwhile, the French contingent commanded by Rochambeau disembarked at Rhode Island, yet it found itself immobilized there by the soldiers of British General Clinton. Washington's forces, depleted due to acute monetary shortages, proved incapable of intervening and lifting this obstruction. Consequently, Rochambeau dispatched pressing dispatches to Paris, soliciting fiscal aid for the colonists. Washington revitalized his troops within a brief period. Observing the developments, Clinton detached 7,000 men from his command and dispatched them to assist Cornwallis in South Carolina. The extended advance of the Allied American-French units prevailed. Unimpeded by Clinton, they arrived at Yorktown during October and encircled it using 16,000 troops. Simultaneously, the French naval squadron under Admiral de Grasse sealed off the town from the ocean. Cornwallis faced defeat. Yorktown capitulated on October 19, 1781. This monumental clash determined the result of the War for Independence and colonial autonomy, less through martial means than via diplomatic channels. The choice to cease combat materialized within mere days.